or should I say it's on the hour, and I just had this thing say this meeting is being recorded. Click that out of the way. Um, Happy coming back on a Saturday morning after we took a few off, and we've got some holiday season coming up that Dan and I haven't talked about, but I suspect we're going to lose some inertia there too, what little we have at this point. I've been amazed that the people that have attended our sessions have really given positive feedback. I just think that more people would have enjoyed coming too. However, um, as I said, we've been doing on the announcement, we've been doing some history things, and they've been well received. One of the prime presenters of that's been Tony Parks, and he sent a comment that he unfortunately wasn't able to make this one. But we do have a new person joining us. This guy has been calling for 46 years, probably with breaks in between, like nighttime and such. Like some of our presenters, he's a member of Caller Lab. Like some of our presenters, he's on the board of governors. He's been there for 6 years. He's been on the executive committee for 4 years. He's a Caller Lab accredited caller coach. Also a member of, or was while it existed, Legacy, and a member of the Lloyd Shaw Foundation, which he's going to talk more about today, all the way from Colorado. Let's have a hand for Bob Riggs. Bob, it's yours. Take it away.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and good morning from Colorado. I know it's not that time other places, but it's fairly early here, 9 o'clock our time. Don asked me to talk about Lloyd Shaw and the foundation, and you can't really talk about the foundation unless you talk a little bit about Lloyd Shaw and who he was and the role he played in our favorite activity. Lloyd Shaw was an extraordinary educator who became a dance leader, and I'll talk more about that. The Lloyd Shaw Foundation is an organization based on the educational philosophy and practice and the practice of Lloyd and Dorothy Shaw. The foundation's purpose is to recall, restore, and teach the folk rhythms of the American people. We in the modern square dance world think of things in terms of the things that we reference related to Caller Lab. Lloyd Shaw looked at it very much as a social activity, as an education, and so on. So I'm going to sort of go a little bit back into history here and probably some things that Tony covered. But when we attempt to answer the question of where did square dancing come from, we generally refer back to folk dances in Europe and what happened and how they came across and how they came to the United States, and two names come up out of that. Lloyd Shaw is one of the names, and Henry Ford the First was the other name. And the Northeast tends to have a history of quadrilles and square dancing that is a little more similar to our contemporary square dancing than some of the dances of the traditional West and the traditional arena. So I'm going to start with Lloyd Shaw. He was born in 1892. He pretty much stayed his whole life in his hometown of Colorado Springs, Colorado. He was known as Dr. Lloyd Pappy Shaw. And in this part of the country, if you have someone who's been dancing more than 30 or 40 years, you talk about Pappy. He was a beloved person in his own arena. He was an innovative educator who dedicated himself to enabling American folk dance and how it contributed to American culture. In 1916, at 25 years old, he was a Colorado College graduate. He was selected to be teacher, principal, superintendent, and coach of the Cheyenne schools in Colorado Springs. He guided the school in an unusual, creative, and sometimes controversial way until 1951, and he died in 1958. In addition to his strong emphasis on demanding academic curriculum, Dr. Shaw developed a valuable art collection, wrote plays for students to perform, created a nature preserve, built an observatory and a cabin up in the mountains here for the kids to hike to. He was known as a nationally recognized square dance caller because of his nationally recognized square dance team known as the Cheyenne Mountain Dancers. He, at the time, was fairly well known because he traveled. So because he was such an educator, he was always on the lookout for new school activities. He had his students conduct rodeos. He built gliders and had them doing gliding, soaring, as in airplane kind of thing, motorless airplanes. He had a jalopy club for the kids that wanted to play with their jalopies. He in that same way of thinking, he searched out old dances of the American people, especially quadrilles, square dances, and round dances in the Rocky Mountain area, and taught them to his students in the school. His school started with dancing being, and it wasn't just square dancing, it was all kinds of American folk dance and international folk dance. He started them in kindergarten, and everyone in the school danced from kindergarten through high school. After it had been going a while, he had the kids performing various folk dances throughout Colorado, and the Cheyenne Mountain Dancers became the name of the team that began touring the United States in 1939 and continued touring until 1951. It was an exuberant exhibition that stirred up great interest in the dances, which had almost disappeared. Square dancing had basically down in the 20s and had basically almost disappeared. It was only happening in small rural hamlets around the West. And so Pappy stirred up interest and excitement. And that exuberant exhibition team, now they didn't just dance the way we danced before today. They included figures that had the ladies flying off the floor, like a flying weather vane and things of that nature. And I have actually done that myself. And it is a very, from the dancer perspective, it is a very, very enthralling experience to be able to be holding on to another guy with your left arm and a lady by your right arm and moving at a rate where they're almost horizontal to the ground. And that kind of energy brings people to go, looks like fun. However, most people go, no way in the world would I ever do that. Looks too dangerous. People began asking for him to teach his philosophies of dancing and teach dancing as he saw it. And he began teaching a series of summer classes. Originally, it was like one in June and one in July, and it then expanded into one in June and July and August. But the August event was only for those who had come before, so it was for repeat participants. And these summer classes were 6-day classes. They didn't necessarily teach people how to call. They didn't necessarily teach them choreography. They taught the people how to dance. And how to dance was considered one of the most important things that he looked at. Those who enrolled in the classes came back year after year for the valuable instruction in dancing, teaching, and calling techniques. and for his vibrant teaching style and vast storehouse of knowledge about dance. He generously shared his love for dance and his philosophy about preserving our dance heritage. The summer classes continued until the 1950s, influencing many of today's most prominent dance leaders. Dr. Shaw died in 1958. A nucleus of class members continued to meet each summer until in 1964, they organized the Lloyd Shaw Foundation to perpetuate his memory, his work, and his special philosophy. There's a little bit of a writing in an article that Kyle Campbell put together, and I think it's really important that we as leaders recognize what this means. This is a quote: "Rhythm is the essence of all true dancing. Without rhythm, you are not dancing, and with poor, uncertain rhythm, you are dancing very poorly indeed. It doesn't matter quite as much with beginners, but with experienced dancers, you should become more experienced with rhythm with each step you take. This silent seeking for perfect rhythm will keep you dancing all your lives and still seeking the truths that lie beyond it. But ignore the rhythm, make it secondary, seek for the outward forms of style only, and you will soon tire of the game and quit forever." A little personal note there, I look at that and I look at our dancing today, and in my 46 years, I've seen a loss of the rhythm by our dancers. They are moving through the patterns, but that is sometimes all they're doing, and they're not really feeling the music or the rhythm that's there. So let me move into the foundation. The foundation is dedicated to the preservation, restoration, and teaching of the folk dances of America. Our work is intended to share the diverse range of dance and music with an intergenerational audience. It is really important that we look at the generations, the younger generation as well as our older generation, and make sure everyone is understanding and experiencing it. We need to develop leadership in dance and music to ensure its continuity, retain records which document the past, the present, and future, and our American dance, and promote fellowship and enjoyment through the production of these dance events, music, and materials. Music is one of the most important parts of our activity. All of this emphasizes the spirit and dances of Lloyd Shaw. So music, dance, and the experience thereof is what the foundation is promoting. The foundation bears the name of Pappy Shaw. After his death, those August groups continued to meet with his widow and partner, Dorothy Stout Shaw. Dorothy was a well-recognized poet of her time, and as well as supporting the dance activity, and was probably one of our first representatives of what we refer to as the partner today, because she was very, very active. Over the time from World War II until his death, Lloyd Shaw had gradually increased the capacity of the summer teaching program to introduce first the June class, then 2 sessions, then 3 sessions, and then I already talked about the August session. After his death, Dorothy became the spiritual leader of his August group that met each year, guiding, teaching, providing philosophical basis for the annual sharing, which become known as the fellowship. She hosted this group in her home at Colorado Springs with a small dance hall, Los Semilla, which is the seed, and her cabin behind Pikes Peak, which is known as Kim Corey. There is an 80-acre tract of land out west of Colorado Springs that is all trees and has a cabin on it. No facilities. You go out to the true outhouse to get if you go there. But But I have been honored to be able to go there several times because Lloyd Shaw's granddaughter has a home that is connected to that property, off the property, but connected to it. And so we were up there actually this last summer. As time passed at these summer things, new people were added, and the most experienced teachers who came shared their experience, their knowledge, and understanding and the importance of dancing in the hearts and minds of the youth of America. They came to realize that Dr. Shaw's philosophy of teaching was needed by a much wider audience and educators and leaders than could be reached by a single week event. That was the reason why the foundation was created. So the foundation is based on the educational philosophy and practice of Lloyd Shaw. The foundation was formed as a Colorado corporation, and as I said before, to recall, restore, and teach the folk rhythms of American people. And that goes beyond just the concept of talking about this in the sense of what we think of dance today. There's a whole emphasis on the fellowship of the community of the people who are dancing. Now, I didn't do this with PowerPoint presentations because virtually nothing I have ever done with the Lloyd Shaw Foundation has been done with the technologies of PowerPoint and things that you have to poke at and talk to and things of that nature. It's more along the side of a fireside chat, of a chat with people, of an interaction. It's very much more of the human social connection between these things. My experience with the foundation started in the spring of 1989. Many of you may know the name of Calvin and Judy Campbell. They were long contributors to the square dance community. They were long members of the Lloyd Shaw Foundation, and in the spring of '89, they asked Alan and I, my wife, to come and help them teach round dancing at the Lloyd Shaw's summer dance camp called the Rocky Mountain Dance Roundup. And so in July, we went to the YMCA of the Rockies, Snow Mountain Ranch, over 8,000 feet in the Colorado Rockies, and we ventured in and sort of dove into what is this organization, what does it represent, and how do we look at it. On arriving, we found a very friendly group of enthusiastic dancers, musicians, and dance leaders, all set to enjoy the fellowship of the event. During the week, we enjoyed the full range of dance forms, taught our rounds, learned a lot about calling traditional square dances, contras, circle mixers, round dances, and a variety of other folk dances. The sessions and the fellowship let us truly experience the fellowship created by good music, played by musicians that truly enjoyed sharing, while moving through some simple and sometimes complex patterns or routines. We return annually to these summer camps, and for 10 years we acted as the camp director to lead these joyous summer experiences for all. It became evident early to us that the leaders who participated cared and brought with them a significant experience and knowledge. We immersed ourselves in the warmth of those attending, learned about the music, learned the characteristics, and enjoyed and gained from each form of dance. Prior to this, I had been pretty much a square dancer and a round dancer, and I learned how to do trios and circle mixers and contras, and the list goes on. I learned what a mescalanza was. These are all dance forms that you used to dance quite a bit. We enjoyed contras led by Don Armstrong, traditional squares led by Bill Lichman, Contemporary Squares, led by Rusty Wright. A wide variety of dance form presented by Cal and Judy Campbell. International and folk and traditional dances presented by Enid Koch, who's Lloyd Shaw's granddaughter. And some of the other leaders that participated in these dance weeks included George and Oni Senek. They were certified Scottish dancers. Joachim Spreiter from Germany. Randy Barnes from Colorado. Ron Counts and Kit Galvin from Colorado. Henry Garfaith from England. Tom Masterson from Colorado, and Pat Kelm, who brought some contras, and so many more. I can't possibly list them who were participants of those weeks. So what is the foundation today? Well, the foundation supports the Lloyd Shaw Foundation archives, which has well over 100,000 items, from records to articles to books to publications. And it resides at the Carson Beverly Dance Library at the University of Denver here in Colorado. There are basically, that I'm aware of, there are 3 repositories in the U.S. There's the University of New England, there's the University of Denver here in Colorado, and there's one in California. The name's slipping my mind and I didn't write it down. But those repositories have both records, music, and dance patterns and histories. At the DU location, there's both the Lloyd Shaw collection and the Bob Osgood collection of materials. We are trying to figure out a way to fund some of the work at the University of Denver because there's so much that they don't have the money to put the manpower necessary to get it indexed and get some of it digitized, which we would like to find a way to help the library make it more available. The foundation also currently sponsors 2 dance weeks. The Rocky Mountain Dance Roundup disappeared in the 80s, but today we have Terpsichore Holiday, which is from the 27th of December through the 1st of January every year. It brings all the traditions that I've spoken about basically to a dance week. It is truly an experience of fellowship and music, and all the music is live music. The dances are presented by leaders, and it ranges from the list of dances: contra, squares, waltz, swing, blues, Morris dancing, raper dancing, English country dancing, clogging, and more. It just goes on, and they're just fun to go to. But if you go there with the classic, I'm a square dance caller of contemporary squares, you will not have as much fun if you go there with the idea of, I want to have fun and I want to learn. If you do that, you will totally enjoy yourself. The other dance camp that the foundation sponsors is the Cumberland Dance Week in Centerville, Tennessee. I should say Terpsichore Holiday is in Frederick, Maryland, near Frederick, Maryland. Cumberland Dance Week is in Centerville, Tennessee, and is an intergenerational event. They have everything for all ages. They have programming for ages from kindergarten through senior citizens, and it's a week-long camp that also held, and tremendous music. I haven't been able to go for many years because I have other obligations at that time of year, but it still is there, and I have to figure out a way to get there sometime. The Lloyd Shaw Foundation still sponsors and supports education. One of our primary focuses historically was education and is education. In that context, if you go to the lloydshaw.org website, you will find that there is a lot of material that is free, and there is lots of music. So there's cue sheets for a wide range of dances from all those different dance forms that I talked about. Provides details of uh, traditional dance figures. Like there's a figure called Do-Si-Do and Face the Sides. There's the old grand square figure, which is a full 64 count pattern, not just a call within the mainstream or basic list. So these figures out there is material. There's also access to publications. Lloyd Shaw wrote some books that contain a tremendous amount of really cool insight into the history. This one is called Cowboy Dances, and this one is it's a second edition, but there's a lot of information in there, and I'm just referencing these because if you want to find out really what he thought, reading his words is better than me talking about it. So the second book I have here is the Round Dance book, and I keep holding it up in the wrong direction. Aline, my wife, is a round dance cure, and she said every round dance, anybody who is doing any circle dancing or round dancing should read that book. Just period. Shouldn't be a question. And finally, a book that is really made up of a lot of Lloyd Shaw's writings is called Lloyd Shaw and the Cheyenne Mountain Dancers. This one was edited finally by his granddaughter, Enid Koch, and but all of them contain lots of information. The website also has access to where you can procure the full set of sets in order on a DVD from 1948 to 1985. And if you want to see material, earlier somebody was saying something about SSD. If you want to find material that would fit into that world and fit into the world of today, there's just masses of choreography, masses of philosophy in that publication. Also, there's Don Armstrong's Dance Workbook, which is a lot of contra dances and other dances, and there's a few other things. There are two dance kits. One's called the Let's Dance, which is a kit that provides dances and music for elementary situations. I use it for my school programs that I do. And there's a secondary kit which provides dances for high school and beyond. That one is we're considering revising it. The Let's Dance kit is just excellent. If you go on the site, you'll see that there's recordings. There's almost 1,000 music recordings. Now, many of them are old. Many of them are organ music. Many of them are things that you would not think to use today. But if you've done a dance party and somebody said, "Do you have Bingo Waltz?" this is a place to find it. If you have done a dance party and you want to find a little routine for preschool kids and kindergartners, there's a dance called Children's Polka, which is excellent for that. There's a trio, threes facing threes, called Clap Dance for Threes, which is dance to Hamilton's Reel, which is excellent for crowds of where there's a gender imbalance. There's a Grand March piece of music, and all of these are ones I use today, and they're available through the foundation. Go back to some of the old hoedowns: Chinese Breakdown, Cripple Creek, Cross the Mountain, Flop-Eared Mule, Old Joe Clark, Yellow Creek. These are all available for $1.50. so it's not going to cost you a fortune. There are hornpipes. There's international folk dances like Dublecka polka, the hora, the siskin. There are jigs. There's music for mixers like Jiffy Mixer, Lancash Barn Dance, Patty Cake Polka. I go to more arenas where I find people who say, well, do you have that heel and toe thing? And in the contra traditional world, it's known as the heel and toe polka. In the Lloyd Shaw world, it's known as patty cake polka. It's exactly the same dance. It's done to the exact same piece of music. But again, it's available there. Quadrilles. The original quadrilles from the Northeast in the early part of the last century. Coronado quadrille, Grand Square quadrille. This is the Grand Square that I was talking about earlier. Tip-Top quadrille, which is an interesting dance, but you'll have to workshop it for contemporary square dancers because they can't do it. Northern Lights quadrille. If you want to have some fun, look that one up. It's a lot of fun to dance, but again, it takes time and it takes a little bit of a different perspective on the world. It goes on. There's reels, there's round dances, round dances that were known in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Black Hawk Waltz, Edelweiss, 5'2", Left Footers One Step, Varsoviana. These are all round dances from that vintage. The Varsoviana is a mazurka. It's a put your little foot equivalent. And there's a place for it in our activity today. Singing calls, Just Because, Barnacle Bill, Four Leaf Clover, Hazel Eyes, Smoke on the Water, and the list goes on and on and on and on. I'm just introducing you to that concept. And if you go to lloydshaw.org, all of this is available. Now, I will tell you, I was just out there this morning, and I've got to get a hold of our webmaster and say, can we fix this up? Because we've got some bad links and things of that nature on the site, but we've got to fix that. As an organization, we also provide scholarships for musicians and dance leaders who want to go and learn. And we currently own the Lloyd Shaw Dance Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is used by a variety of dance groups. The one other thing I would mention there is hanging on the walls of the dance center are the portraits, the Hall of Fame portraits of the dance leaders from a way back. And I don't know whether people are familiar with that. I can show you what those portraits look like online if we want to share a screen and I can go to it. As Don said, both my wife and I have been on the Lloyd Shaw board. We have been directors of dance events. We have, at this point in time, I am on the board of directors of the Lloyd Shaw Foundation, and I am honored to be the current president of the foundation. And my wife is the editor of the American Dance Circle, which is the quarterly publication that the organization puts out. So that's the spiel, guys. I see a couple of things in the chat, but I don't know what they are. Dan, you got anything you've reviewed here? Because I wasn't looking at them.
There wasn't a whole lot. I think the only thing, aside from the fact that, yes, I've done at least one of those the girls fly out moves, but that was at IAGSDC, and there were some really burly bears dancing girl. I dropped a note in there so that I can go back later and get some of the particular dance figures that you mentioned and go look them up, because I'm interested in using a lot more of the kind of one night stand material that you mentioned. And if y'all haven't read Cowboy Dances, it is where the book from which most of what we do these days comes from, or quite a bit of it. And it has a great rant toward the end of the the prose part of it before he gets into specific dances that Bob Osgood completely ignored about why we should never be teaching square dancing to elementary school kids. That I highly recommend reading just for the culture of square dancing and how we promote square dancing and why everybody comes out of elementary school saying, I've done that. I don't need to do it as an adult. So he saw that coming 100 years ago.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, wasn't Lloyd Shaw the guy that Henry Ford hired to come teach his workers how to square dance?
No, that was Benjamin
that was
somebody.
Benjamin Lovett.
Okay.
So that story is another story. I will say, if you're looking at books, the other book that is part of our history, and I'll just put it up here. This is Good Morning by Henry Ford. And so this is sort of the other side of this two-pronged resurgence of our dance activity. The Ford side was in Detroit. Benjamin Lovett was the dance master who, and I'll do a quick story on it. Henry Ford and his wife went on vacation to New England. And probably the people in New England can tell me that I'm all wet here somewhere, but they went there, and that night there was a cotillion, a dance, and he enjoyed it so much that he went down and he went up to Benjamin Lovett and said, I'd like to hire you to teach my staff in Michigan to dance. And Benjamin Lovett said, I can't. Because I have a contract with the inn, and some of the names of the details of the inn name and so on are missing from my head at the moment. But anyway, so Benjamin went to bed and got up the next morning, and Ford went to bed, and when he got up the next morning, he went down, and Benjamin Lovett was having breakfast, and he went over and asked him. He said, well, would you come and teach my folks in Dearborn how to dance? And Benjamin said, no, I can't. I have a contract. And Henry Ford says, well, you can, because I just bought the inn.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
So that
I might as
that
well
means-
break in. Let me throw in some stuff that I know about it. I lived for 29 years, probably 5 miles from the inn. It's called the Wayside Inn in Sudbury,
That's
Mass.
right.
And actually, the first club that I organized and ran for a number of years was called the Wayside Squares. It was in Sudbury. And the story I heard was just what you said, that when Benjamin Lovett said he wouldn't go, Ford bought the inn. But I think Tony Parks said a few weeks ago that was only a rumor, and that there was some slight difference to that, but close anyway.
I need to talk to Tony and find out if we can clarify this story that's been going around for years.
Actually, go back and listen to you can talk to Tony too.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to the session, the most recent session he did.
Okay.
So I guess nowadays you would have to watch out for Elon Musk.
Yeah.
That was pretty commonplace back then. A lot of the big corporations used folk activity, songs and dances to gather their teams together and get them focused on work. So I found an old corporate songbook at IBM. I worked for them back in the 70s and 80s, and they all used to get together on Monday mornings like they still do at Walmart and sing songs specifically for their corporation. Yeah, it's a little scary, but
Actually, because of the philosophies that I've encountered, I would say that some of the characteristics of sharing music, sharing singing, and sharing food are some of the most important things we can do in our culture, and we don't do it enough. And some people say, well, that's pretty sissy and we shouldn't need to do that. But I'm sort of on the other end of that. Is if we don't do that, we're losing the core of our humanity and the fellowship within our groups.
I want to throw in a comment that you brought up and others have mentioned since, is the figure where the girls swing off with their feet in the air. I was introduced to square dancing, and I guess not quite calling, through IOCA, which is the International Outing Club Association, an association of all the outing clubs. I was an ardent member of backpacking and rock climbing and all that other stuff. And square dancing was one of our regular activities, mostly traditional squares, completely traditional, hardly any contras except for, no, it doesn't matter. But the one of the figures occasionally, the random caller that was hired occasionally did was one of these things with the girls swinging out. And college age kids did it with enthusiasm. And eventually, and I remember one incident, but they sort of frowned upon it because somebody let go and a gal went flying out towards her feet and scraping her face pretty badly on the floor when gravity finally took over. So if you want to introduce that to your system, be sure you have insurance.
I've only seen it in exhibition groups, Don.
Well, we used to do it because it was fun, but
Yeah, I guess so.
I would mention the fact that we have a group, and I have done it, and these groups there's all sorts of safeties associated with how you get in the right position and what do you do if something happens, if there's a slipping of a hand or this or that. So all those safeties, if anyone is considering doing any of those figures, whether it's the flying weather vane, the merry-go-round, a petticoat fountain is a great way to break a nose. It's happened more than once. My wife's dad dropped her mom and almost broke her nose. So there's all sorts of things in here, and every one of them, there are safeties and particular handholds that you have to follow. I will say that there are some of these figures that come out of history. One of Dorothy Shaw's great searches after Lloyd Shaw passed away was she was trying to find the origin of each of the calls that they were using. And for the longest time, she couldn't find the origin of the Thar star that they were using and that we use today. And she was traveling in Europe later in life, and she visited a small town in Austria and found that particular figure was part of a town folk dance that had been there for a very long time. And she went, yes, I finally found the origin of that figure. Most of the figures we look at, we think that they're fairly unique and but she was convinced every one of them came out of folk dancing in Europe.
A reminder that most of our, right now we have figures that are compact little things, but it used to be routines that callers used and named the routines. And one of those routines was called Chicken Plucker. Bob, I'm curious, do you know the origin, who created Chicken Plucker?
Off the top of my head, I do not, but it's in Cal's writing because he brought up the fact, and it was in the 60s. And that vintage of time when we began, and it was one of the traditional callers that began doing the patter, the extemporaneous kind of patter calling. And I can't remember the name, but Cal has a tremendous amount of other things that are there. I actually, Dan, can I share?
Yes, I believe you can.
Okay, let me. let me bring up something here, get to the right place, because I've got, all right, so this is the Lloyd Shaw Foundation site I was mentioning. I'm not going to go into any more detail into this, but you know, there's lots of information in here about the foundation, the dance center, the educational aspects of it. And I was mentioning some dance figures. Don was just talking about dance figures, and these are figures like the grapevine twist, the rattlesnake twist, smoke on the water, these tunnel square. Tunnel square is an interesting one. They make a 6-hand tunnel, and couples tunnel through from one end to the other. So there's just a bunch of things there that are interesting. The dance weeks I mentioned, the store, the recordings are over here that I mentioned, books, educational, et cetera. What I wanted to show you was, and this may become more available to you or more interesting to you over time. There's this site called the Internet Archive, and Cal Campbell put up a lot of material here, and this article here I would recommend reading. It'll either confirm the things I said or contradict them, one or the other. I think most of them are confirmed, but the interesting thing about this particular and I know that's hard to see particularly, but if you went into this, you'd see this is a write-up that Cal Campbell did for the 2004 National Square Dance Convention. And this is the Cowboy Dances book. There's some quotes. That quote about rhythm I did is in here, and so on. But if you end up, I know that's quick, but if you end up scrolling through this material, there's Lloyd Shaw and the Cheyenne Mountain Dancers. What did it do? Yeah, that updated on me. Oh, I know why I did it. I had searched for Cal Campbell, and I went to the Cal Campbell search rather than the. But this has a huge number of items and even to the music, and their recordings right out here on the internet. Here's the Round Dance book. Here's a Cowboy Dances music selection. There's an actual copy of Cowboy Dances. One of these was that. But if you went, I mentioned Black Hawk Waltz earlier, you can effectively play it. I probably don't have my music turned on, but can you hear that?
No, I think that you have to, when you start sharing, you have to click the share this, share music as well box.
Yeah, well, it's not important. I didn't do that, so we'll just bypass this. I wasn't planning to play anything, but there's cued and uncued music here and so on. So this is something for you to, when you have time and you want to do something totally off the wall, here's another source to look at things. So anyway, I'm trying to remember what took me down that line, but those
Swing Like Thunder, the figure.
Say that again.
You were talking about Swing Like Thunder, where you lift the girls up, and the origin of Dar, and it's actually defined in there. I put the link in the chat, actually, to that, where they define how you do it and lift them up.
Okay. I think that's important to know that this is just a resource that's available, and that was the biggest thing I wanted to look at. This Internet Archive is a huge resource. Lloyd Shaw, there's 641 results, some of them music, some of them articles, some of them written. It goes on and on and on. The same thing if Cal Campbell, before he passed away last fall, put up a huge number of his writings. Another source, another topic. But just wanted you to be aware of that.
Bob, you mentioned in passing the Hall of Fame, which was something that Bob Osgood, you mentioned Bob Osgood in passing also, but the Hall of Fame is a Bob Osgood thing. And I just wanted to let us all know that in the very near future, we are going to have a presentation similar to this one on Bob Osgood and Hall of Fame and Sets in Order magazine and all the other things that he's known for. He's somebody that well, as you said, a disciple of time-wise anyway of Lloyd Shaw, but still very influential and had a lot of influence before I started into you and I started into the activity. So anyway, that will be coming up soon.
Yeah, I was actually, let me do this real quickly. So under the Square Dance Hall of Fame, there are the leaders here. The Hall of Fame: Don Armstrong, Charlie Baldwin, Al Brundage, this Marshall Flippo, and this list on the right-hand side here has details. Since many of us know Marshall, Marshall Flippo, they have a detail and include a history that you can read about each of these individual Hall of Fame members. So yes, I may be usurping Don's next session, but this is an excellent place to go to see. These are the portraits. Many of us know Frank Lane, Earl Johnston, Bob Page, Bob Osgood. So this is sort of the source, and these are the portraits that are hung in the Lloyd Shaw Dance Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And a couple of years ago when we had Caller Lab in Albuquerque, some of the folks that are part of the Hall of Fame, like Melton Luttrell, we were able to get them to stand next to their portrait. And it was pretty neat to have them there. So I just want to show you where they were. And this is one of the other things that the Lloyd Shaw Foundation does is currently have that dance center and sponsor that. I hope it was informative, and I hope that if you have any questions, certainly send them my way. And as usual, if you're looking for an organization that supports this kind of this side of this activity, join the foundation. We need all of the members we can get, and we're trying to do, currently one of the activities I'm trying to do is get the membership together to do a visioning session to sort of refine and redo our strategic plan for the next few years, and so the organization can begin to improve its contribution to the overall activity.
Bob, one of the notes I took while you were talking, that you were talking, I think you were quoting Cal Campbell, who was quoting Lloyd Shaw about rhythm and how dancing is all about rhythm and what have you. As an aside, one of the beauties of square dancing as we know it now, the modern Western puzzle solving, is, as you know, there are some people that just don't have rhythm. They're strollers. They can't walk with the beat of the music, let alone the phrase. And we provide an activity for them. They can even survive and enjoy this, even though they can't enjoy the rhythms of other things. And I think that's I mean, I agree with you that if you feel the music and dance with the rhythm and have your body with the rhythm, that things are much more enjoyable. But I always admire marvel, excuse me, at the fact that our current Western activity gives those people a chance to participate that don't have a rhythm, an ounce of rhythm in them, but they can still enjoy our activity.
I don't disagree with you, Don. I do believe, and I've seen it in our area, that callers are so busy teaching figures and calls and choreography that they don't spend enough time on teaching the dancers to dance. And dancing, yes, there are shufflers, and yes, there are those who walk a step every beat and a half and can't hear it, and we all have them, and we all love them as much as we do the ones who are perfect at it. But I think we must realize that our culture, our human society needs the flow and motion of music and the interaction thereof. And if we can find a way to teach them to get close, even if they never get there, we have succeeded in improving their lives in a very broad way, more so than teaching them another 30 terms in our vocabulary.
Totally agree.
And may I add, I've been thinking about reflecting what you said about the singing, dancing, and eating together. Now I've been serious. I've been in the activity for quite a while, and when I started dancing, Don knows it. So he's the only one who probably knows I'm not 37, but no. But I've been in there for quite a while, and it came over with the Americans, and what people enjoyed most was not only the dancing, but the socializing and the potluck. When everybody brought something to eat and food, and everybody was enjoying the dance, but everybody was also looking forward for socializing and eating together and enjoying each other's meals, what they brought. And that dropped within in the last 20 years, I would say. And I reflected to my clubs, I've been calling for about 10 clubs and groups. Those who kept that up are still strong and more or less will survive COVID, because it was not just in for the dancing as going to the cinema, paying and enjoying and going home, but also stay together, connect, have parties, socializing, and eat together. And that's a part I've never been thinking about. So that's a good point.
Well,
Really is.
One of the things I've always said is music, dance, or music, motion, food, and fellowship are the key ingredients to our activity. And in reference to COVID, last summer, when we couldn't dance indoors, we held at least once a month what we called a parking lot social. We'd have everybody bring their own food and their own lawn chair, and we'd sit in a big circle with our masks on, and we'd talk to each other.
Well, wouldn't that be a slogan with 3 F's like fun, food, fellowship?
I think it would be a great slogan, and it works. And I will tell you that it does hold groups together, because as we've discovered, social is a big part of this activity. And so you're exactly right. And it is a philosophy of Lloyd Shaw, just connecting it to what we're talking about today.
So, Bob, I'd like to know how you guys sat around in a circle with your masks on eating.
Well, we took our masks off.
As another aside, many of us on this Zoom session have changed your name to include your location. Mickey hasn't, but for those that you don't know, well, I'm not picking on you, Mickey, but your English is good enough, so it's not obvious that it's a German accent to everybody. But Mickey's in Germany, and it's nice to have Germany represented.
As a matter of fact, Bavaria, but I can talk the English the Bavarian way as well too.
Sehr gut.
All right.
Mickey, what part of Belgium was that from, Mickey?
Well, we have not entered Belgium yet.
I see the big hand is pointing straight up right now, so let me do the traditional formal ending of our session. Thank you guys all for attending. Thank you, Dan, for electronically hosting. Thank you, Zoom, for making this possible. Let's have a big hand for Bob Riggs for joining us and presenting some information that I know is new to me. I'd heard a lot about Pappy Shaw, but in the Cheyenne Mountain Dancers, but not really as much. And it's good to know that I wrote down that I should look on the foundation's website, that there's some more good stuff there. There are several good websites out there with stuff. And the usual comments that if you only designated an hour to spend on our silliness here, feel free to go without offending anybody. And if you want to hang around, I'm sure there's going to be a bit more conversation, usually on topic and then drifting off. But with that, thanks, Bob, and let's continue on with the show.
Yeah.
Well, if nobody's got something to do, I got a personal question for Bob.
Okay.
That I should have done in a phone call. But speaking of different forms of dance, a friend of mine who unfortunately recently passed away, and I hadn't seen for years, had moved to Boulder and was a Scottish dance leader. Did you ever happen to know Ellie Reed Lewis?
I did not.
Oh, she
So I'm
was
sorry.
a Lewis of a descendant of Lewis and Clark. Clark, you're not a descendant of Lewis and Clark, are you? No. Name is on the wrong side. But she was an active Scottish dance leader in Boulder for many years, probably from 1975 or 80 up until about 4 years ago, when she moved back to New York.
I'm sure everybody's sort of like this. We cross paths with these other arenas, and I would touch base with the Scottish world every so often, because a member of one of my groups was a Scottish dancer that danced with the people in that arena. And I think that that's something we should all be aware of, is that there are these subgroups or other dance form groups that are out there, and we sometimes cross over or bump into them, and even sometimes have an opportunity to go and join in their events. And I highly encourage it. I don't get to go to Chris Kermit was holding English country dances, and we would go periodically, and that was always an enjoyable evening to do that. He had to cancel his normal big dance of the year, which is the summer solstice dance that he has every December, because of COVID. And but there are those things, and then in Colorado, there's the Colorado Friends of Old Time Music and Dance, referred to as Seafoot Mad, which is the traditional world. And virtually all parts of the country and the world, I suspect these groups exist. It's just a matter of finding them and bumping into them. And I've even done Contra evenings for one of those groups. I don't think they like my Contras because they didn't ask me back.
This parallel stuff. I think the first presentation that we had Tony Parks do was talking about the parallel world of the currently very active group across the country and the world of contra dances and traditional squares. And there's also the folk dancing and the English country dancing etc. A lot of things that you named.
Hmm.
Mickey, in the school that I met you at, was that the one that Margot was at from Denmark?
Yeah, Carsten Nielsen was there.
Karsten was there, but there was in one of those a woman named Margot who was originally from the U.S. but was now in Denmark and is a pretty strong. Tony actually mentioned her a few weeks ago. A strong contra dance leader. I was just curious about the Western side of it, but speaking of the parallel world, I can't. Margot.
I know Carol Blackman is one of the strong ones over here.
I've heard
David
Carol's
Carol
name.
Blackman.
It wasn't Carol, but I've heard her
Okay.
name. I can't remember. I was at several of Al's schools, so been trying to get Al to do a talk, but he says
Get a
sure,
hold
but
of-
never comes around. I'm sure
Yeah.
you'd like to talk to him again, right?
Yeah. We sometimes I've get him on the phone. So last time was just a couple of weeks or it was a couple of months ago now, and yeah.
Al just got married again, which I haven't personally congratulated him, but good thing.
Yeah. I met him with we were talking when he was together with his fiancée, and they just had visit some family over there, and he told me a story about quitting square dance because he was so upset about the level he called, and that some caller walked up to him yelling and screaming over the dance floor, "You can't do that, that's not possible over here." And I think it was a right and left through and a half sachet and pass through with a wheel around and whatever, from a squared set. Yeah,
he called basic at a plus club. He should have known better.
So background is Al Stevens is a caller who started from New Hampshire, went into the military, traveled all around, ended up in Germany, had an awful lot of influence of calling in Germany, doing a lot of caller schools. And as Mickey can attest, and Mel also, the way that people dance in Europe tends to be a little bit, what am I trying to say? The basic formation, the basic fundamental stuff in Europe tends to be different interpretation of what we consider fundamental here in the United States. And
I'm not so sure it's different in the fundamentals. It's here's the definitions, here's the goals, here it is. It gets translated. So what's translated is this is what they do, so this is what we do. But when you come North America or various other places, half the time the only part they read is that little bit about here's how the dance action goes, and all the rest of it is not taken into account. Whereas in Germany, what the first guidance book I got was a English translation of the German translation of the Collar Lab. Here's how you teach dancing. And it was very, very different how it was presented, because that's what they had, was this is how they do it, explained in a different language. And it really made a difference because they took it as gospel.
I think one of the word I was looking for was standard applications. What standard applications in one part of the U.S. is different than the other part of the U.S. is different than other parts of the world. Still a good thing to document to have, but I think Al was, even though he knew, was taken aback calling here in the U.S. again when he was so used to calling what was standard in Germany, and the dancers who only dance standard applications thought that's not possible.
On the other hand, I have to say that not to get a wrong picture of Al, he also knew when to call the extended application on the floor and to entertain them, but as well as when to leave it when it was there for students, and he could really entertain with the singing and with nice flowing choreo. And as a matter of fact, he was, when I started dancing, he was big with a duo with Dave Prescott, and those were genius up there, and I admired them. And I couldn't imagine that a couple of years later I was together on stage with them and still admire them. And so many dances I did with Elle. And when they were hired and I was hired, and they were putting us on one level, but I never saw that because, and I can tell that because we were talking like that, you always can learn from the old farts. And I said it with all serious. I said it with all respect, and I still admire both of them, Dave and Elle, and like working together with them, and enjoy every dance and every event we get together and do something together. And it turned around that they also enjoy, especially with Dave, because he's still over in Germany, very much likes to say, come on, let's do something together. And then we stay on stage for a couple of hours and and always keep sharing the tips, right? So, and that was a process which, on the one hand, you enjoyed because, I mean, I stepped in as a kid, and then you suddenly on stage with the big names, and yeah, it's
The only time I ever met Dave in person, we've communicated a lot on phone and etc. since then, but the only time I met him on person was at a Dave Prescott Al Stevens dance, where they were together in Stuttgart.
Yeah.
And I was visiting, and I think called a tip at the time. But and yeah, that's one thing to say about Al and Dave also is they understand choreography in lots of different ways and what have you, but they're basically really good entertainers.
Yeah.
And Al was extremely easy to work with the several dances I did with him. Clark, what have you got to add?
Can I share my screen for a sec, Dan? I'm going to hit
It
share and
should
see what it
be
says.
open to you.
Okay. Yeah, it looks good. So I was playing with this while we were mentioning different dance forms, and especially remembering the MIT Folk Dance Club. So name a dance form.
Mescalenza.
No,
I knew
I
that
was
was coming
thinking,
up.
I was thinking like folk dancing, square dancing, that kind of thing. Should we start with square dance?
Yeah,
Yes.
why not?
And why is my typing not going to where I want? Here we go. So a topic of square dance. So this is how often people search for square dancing from 2004 all the way till today. And we notice there's a decline. Do we have another one? Let's go for folk dance. Because I noticed that the folk dance club at MIT is pretty much gone, even before COVID. And it used to fill, a 30 square hall when I first went to MIT. So there's folk dance. It's had the same kind of decline we've had.
Look up.
Now I happen to pick. Say again?
Oh, I was going to say do swing dancing.
Okay. I was thinking ballroom dancing, but let's go for swing dancing because we think of swing dancing as having had a resurgence, right?
Right, but although that resurgence was late 90s, early noughts, which I realized was only 3 years ago, but
Oh, it'll definitely be down from the 90s, but I just wonder.
And
okay, what about salsa?
I'll go for salsa dance. It's the last one, the green one here. So it's kind of down. So far, the yellow one, which is swing dancing, is way up.
What about circle dancing? It's a form of folks dancing.
Right,
yeah,
but do you think the question is, are people going to get on Google and say, hey, I want to find a circle dance near me? So
you might also do the thing you suggested, which was ballroom dancing, because we did a couple of specific dances that I think people would look for specifically. But with the TV shows, the dancing TV shows, I wonder if ballroom dance would be a thing that people would think they're interested in.
It's interesting
Okay,
because some of the
so
search categories
I'm
are
going to
things
have to
like
disappear
two-step and
for
so
just
on.
a second. Yeah, I'll be there in just a second. So here's ballroom dance, and that one's pretty high, but going down. And
Okay, I got one more.
Country two-steps.
Also, give me a sec. Let me add one that I picked randomly, and then I'll add yours. I picked breakdancing. We know breakdancing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was shocked. Oh, it's the purple one that just got added in there.
Yeah.
It's pretty high up there. I mean, it's also come down over time, but yeah.
Contra
And
dance?
then
On the other hand,
Contras?
I think this is
Oh.
positive for square dance because we've all been thinking about that our activity is going down, but it seems like all dancing is going down.
Yes.
And it's
That's a
not
good
only
point.
a problem we're having.
So does that mean you should put bowling in?
Oh yeah, I did that. Yeah.
Yeah, but in Germany we have something like Kegeln, which is similar to bowling. I like bowling more, but the Kegeln itself, it went down. There were a lot of groups, and they've been closing alleys over and over. So all the social type activities, they've been going down. Yeah, but to see all the dances go down, that's interesting.
So anyhow, you can play with this. It's Google Trends.
Zoom
I
meeting.
have a visitor, and I'm going to go away. So it's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
I'm now deep in all sorts of things in Google Trends. This could suck me in for a while.
How about Zoom meetings? That sounds like a. I'm trying to think of something that went up. Any other comments, questions for Bob on his topic since we got him here? Hopefully, Bob, you'll join us on some of these others too. I think we had some good sessions, but I wish there were more people around taking advantage of joining us in person rather than just on the videos. Although the video, looking at how many people have viewed the videos afterwards, there are quite a few. I think we're doing some fun stuff.
So the trend is still that the sessions are being viewed.
Oh, what did you put in there, Yolanda?
I said, so talking about trends, at least we know that the videos are being viewed, even though the group itself is getting smaller.
Dan, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, so the a big view on our videos is 350. And I mean, it's been a little while, but the biggest one was Tony Park's history of square dancing.
Wow.
So, relative to what big views are out there in the world, it's barely a blip. On the other hand, 350 isn't bad. And we've got a few others that broke 100, which, given that's probably about as many active square dance callers as there are in the world right now. So it's certainly not more than an order of magnitude. It's certainly they're probably only about 1,000, 1,500 active square dance callers in the world. So
I haven't looked at how many, but that's interesting. I'll have to go check that again.
I mean,
it's always interesting.
Yes, they're probably more than that, probably about double that as Caller Lab members, but it seems like there are a lot who aren't calling.
Well, maybe for attractivity in the web and to get more clicks, you probably need to work with pets and start the video with a pet. Like cats or dogs or whatever crazy birds.
We need, just because I've been doing a lot of searches on this and seen a lot of kind of million or at least 100,000 views things, we need to do the reacts to or first listen of thing.
Hey, Mickey, it's funny you should say that because I had mine in my lap with me for a while there.
I saw him. Yeah.
That's my Sadie Nick. That's our pug.
I was wondering what that was initially, Bill, but then I recognized it as a pug. Yes.
We have 3 of them in the house. We have a 13-year-old. She's an apricot, and then we got a 9-month-old, and she's black. And Sadie Mae, I like her color. I love the name. She's silver.
You know,
I didn't appreciate pugs until my daughter got 2 of them, and quite nice
You just hate
companions.
them.
You know the story. You know the story, Don, on how the pugs got their flat noses?
No.
Chasing parked cars. But boy, do they snore.
How long have you been saving that one up, Bill?
I've had that one around for years. Thank you.
Well, I got another one for you. As one of those
Okay.
little dogs were walking on the street, and a German Shepherd was looking out at the window on the first floor. And he said, "Won't you come down and let's play together?" And he said, "Well, I can't." And he said, "Well, jump through the window." And then the German Shepherd said, "I don't want to look like you."
Good. That's the one.
So, who wants to lead a session on pugs next time?
My wife and I, when we lived in California before we moved out to Oklahoma, she and I for about 3 years were involved in a rescue program for pugs. And through the course of those 3 years, we had 16 pugs come through the house. 14 of them went to good homes. 2 of them went to a wonderful home. They stayed with me.
So, how do we relate pets to square dancing? They've done them on horses. Tractors, I guess, aren't, and wheelchairs aren't pets.
But he had him on his arm. Now, if you have a thinking cloud like, what the hell is collar? What the hell is square dance? Wouldn't I get some food or get out for a walk? You know, that, to comment his how do you say, his mimic, right?
You know, Bob, you mentioned about the food, fun, and fellowship, and I always have to chuckle that, you know, they tell people that square dancing is a great exercise, works every muscle in your body, including that one here between your ears. But then, you know, you go to the dance and they've got food, and then, I don't know, back in the day, after the dance was done, where we go? The pizza parlor.
Yeah, one of the things that COVID has actually helped with is the amount of food has been reduced. And so it's actually a good thing. But I think the whole point is the fellowship aspect of it. And sometimes that means breaking bread. But yes, we can get our extra calories that way too.
Back in the day, I used to, when most of my weekends were spent out in the mountains, and it was a workshop or 2 of square dancing during the week, and people talked about it being exercise. I thought, what are they talking about being exercise? This is nothing compared to what I do. And as I got older, I get worn out square dancing. Of course, contra dancing kept me a little bit better physical shape, but yeah, it is exercising. If you, everything's a spectrum, and you reach a point where square dancing is good exercise. And as far as this muscle is the other, one of the attractions, I think, of square dancing that other things don't have, I haven't followed this through fully, but it's a left brain and right brain activity, both at the same time. And I think that's one of the interesting parts that stimulates people when they do it.
Hey, Don?
Yes.
I do have a correlation for you. You were looking about relating square dancing to animals and then getting people in and advertising and everything else. Well, square dancing, we all know that in advertising, sex sells. And relatively, square dancing is related to the first recorded instances of animals having sex. And that deals with a square dancing fish called Dicki. And that's a fact, 365 million years ago. So there's a piece of useless trivia for you. There was actually
yes.
a new when you were asking, it's the news article. Of course, it's in the UK Mirror, so you don't know how much credit you want to give that to. But
I'm glad you said Dicki, not Mickey.
Anyway, that's the article. But well, there you go. There's your link to animals.
I agree with you about trivia and useless.
So I'm still stuck on Clark's searching for Google Trends. And one of the things that I've been comparing square dancing to, partially because our Thursday night group, until COVID, immediately followed a jazzercise club or jazzercise event in the venue that we had, was searching relative to jazzercise. And jazzercise stayed relatively flat up until, well, actually, it was even growing up until like mid 2010, and it was relatively flat until the beginning of COVID. But the thing that's interesting about jazzercise is people are actually making money, making a living as jazzercise instructors, which is something that very few people are doing as square dance instructors these days. So, and also ties into Don's comment about exercise, because none of those people, and they're all, at least in the class that we follow, are all roughly our target age group, would consider square dancing exercise.
What about yoga or Pilates, which seem to be a kind of a modern hype type thing, especially Pilates? Yoga seems to be more consistent.
Let's see, let's replace salsa here with.
There's some specific kinds of jazzercise type things that people do, and I've forgotten the names, but like the difference between searching for swing or salsa versus ballroom, if you want to get a more complete picture of the jazzercise universe, if you put those other terms in, whose names I unfortunately can't. Zumba is one of them, but there's another one that might give you more data.
Well, Chris, you said that, you just said it, Zumba. That's become a very big thing.
Yeah, there's another one that's that might even be bigger, whose name I can't think of.
A lot of these, I think, tend to be very bursty in terms of popularity. The Zumba had that huge, kind of like, yes, it peaked around 2010 and then went off. And I'm sure that there's something else that is offset slightly, because some fitness instructor comes up with a concept, manages to build a playlist for it, markets that out, gyms adopt that for a while, and then the next trend comes through.
Yeah. What is hip at that moment or at that time?
Exactly.
The reason why breakdancing is, of course, still relevant is that they're not talking about disco, right? They're talking about hip hop.
Yeah, and hip hop dancing is very different from disco. A lot of, very different movement styles. Disco is much closer to line dancing, I think.
While you're at it, why don't you plug in tap dancing and clogging?
Let's go back to that.
I'm going to guess those look a lot like square dancing.
I'm going to guess tap dancing died out a long time ago and clogging peaked a little bit earlier.
Yeah, well, let me remove Pilates, because that...
yeah, that distorts.
Yeah. And clogging might... well, that surprises me. Clogging, actually, there's a little boost here.
Yeah.
What color are we talking?
The green. Let me remove the hip hop here so we're not querying the scale. So yeah, clogging. I bet video clogging was a thing that came back when the COVID happened.
Well, that would be
Change your timeline to 5 years so that the more present.
Of course, now that we're doing all these searches, the past 5 hours thing might become more relevant.
Well, you can go down to this year if you want, but
yeah, no,
you too can have influence.
Yeah, what's interesting is if you've done one just on hip hop itself, because you'll find that that's probably scaling way higher than all of the other, just hip hop as a dance form, as opposed to break dancing and all the variants of hip hop.
I had hip hop dance in there before. Of course, hip hop blows everything out of the water.
Yeah.
But
interesting to look at the map at the bottom of the screen too. But
yeah, the maps are super interesting. I highly recommend that.
I did open it in a different window, but I'll explore later. It's trends.google.com.
Yes.
On the other hand, because of COVID, since you were kind of in a lockdown and were not able to move out to get in socializing, why would you look up for some activity like that? So this may be also an indication for the drop of the interest in searching for something.
That's true. And the searching is one way to look at it, but it's not a total thing about popularity. I mean, since everybody knows so much about square dancing, nobody has to Google it anymore.
Here we go, folks. Another dog.
Oh,
this
doesn't look like a pug.
No, this is my daughter-in-law's dog. It's a Chihuahua. Her name is Bella. She's about, and her tail is beating up on my side right now. And let me see if I can grab the one more.
Zoom is having troubles deciding whether to focus on her or the background.
Okay, last but not least. Oh, there you go.
They're about the same color. You could do it like, before and after. Jump off the first floor.
Mickey, you've got a strange mind.
Isn't that a prerequisite to be a caller? Strange mind.
Yeah. It helps. Well, I'm thinking we've drifted far enough from topic and we're sort of...
You think? Oh, what the hell?
So I think I am going to bow out. Dan, I know it's too close to your appointment.
I've got to go get my eyes checked.
So I'll talk to you either later today or tomorrow.
Fingers, Dan.
Everyone, thank you for attending, and great chatting with you. I'll see if I can make some future event.
Wonderful. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks a lot, Bob. Enjoyed it.
Make a good addition, Bob. Would love to have you. Thanks again for the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Bob.
Nice to see you, Yolanda.
Mm-hmm.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And we'll see you later, Mel.
Yes. See you later, Mel.